A bright future for any organization depends on the integration of strategic thinking, a strong board, enthusiastic volunteers, and effective public relations. But now let's get even more specific. We asked Mary Cantu, Executive Director of Project Learn to Read, an adult basic learning nonprofit in San Antonio, Texas, to share the experience of her small nonprofit organization.
Hi, I'm Mary Cantu, Director of Project Learn to Read of San Antonio. I'm very excited to have this opportunity to tell you about our situation and get your suggestions about what we might do to strengthen our program. Project Learn to Read was founded in 1988 to serve persons 15 years and older who read at 0 to 5th grade levels and or have learning disabilities. We continue to be the only program designed to meet the needs of this desperately underserved group in San Antonio. Our operating budget this fiscal year is only $43,000. We have budgeted to operate with part-time staff until mid-January and plan to keep our doors open for existing students with all volunteer staffing. Normal operation with 4 full-time and 1 half-time paid staff requires a minimum of $170,000. At Project Learn to Read, we have built a strong, effective, proven model for providing quality services. We've assembled a highly competent and experienced staff. We know how to train, manage, and support volunteer tutors, and we remain committed to continued improvement. What we have not yet learned is how to multiply our efforts, mobilize and expand so that enough services are made available throughout the city to meet the demand. At this moment, we are struggling to keep our doors open for the students already enrolled in our program while waiting lists grow. We're already writing grants, attending meetings, and pursuing other avenues of support, and we need to move our program to a higher level of operations and stability. At the same time, we're interested in how we can work within the whole community to make it possible for every undereducated adult to have access to appropriate services. How can we strategize to grow our program in a realistic way? How can we mobilize our community? How can we create collaborations that truly benefit all parties? And how do we find the resources to make all of this possible? Thanks for the opportunity. I look forward to hearing your ideas and hope that the following discussion is helpful not only to our program, but to any literacy center facing similar issues.
To address the concerns of Project Learn to Read, we have assembled our panel of experts and deep thinkers. Strategic mastermind Robert Pinhero, public relations maven Toni Gardner, board expert Barry Silverberg, and volunteer goddess Kathleen McCleskey. Well, now first, Barry, let me come to you. Mary Cantu has a budget of $43,000. She needs $170,000 just to have 4 full-time staff. Seems to me the first thing she needs is to come to you and your big fancy board to get some more money.
Well, I think the first thing she needs to do is reach out and identify who are the stakeholders in her organization, who are the people who care about her organization, and who are the people
outside of the organization.
Outside of the organization as well as within the organization to work together to solve the problem, to agree on what the challenges are, and then to work on a plan to achieve that. Raising money is about creating relationships, and so the organization needs to clearly expand its relationships in the community. There's a number of strategies to do that in order to raise money ultimately.
So is the idea that, Robert, to create a strategic plan, she's supposed to, do you agree with Barry that she's got to get a whole bunch of people in?
Absolutely, and they really need to be clear about what does Project Read really want to accomplish in the community. There's a great quote that I remember from Black & Decker that said, "We don't sell quarter-inch drills, we sell quarter-inch holes." So when Mary gathers this group, they really need to clearly define where it is they want to go, how do they want to be perceived in the community.
Well, Toni, how do they figure out how they want to be perceived? That's about getting the message, right?
Correct. I think one of the techniques that I use, I think it's kind of similar to what we just heard Robert mention, is to have the organization first come up with a catchy tagline. It's like, I think GE a while back said, we bring good things to life.
Right.
And I think in terms of this particular situation is have your internal and your external communicators think outside of the box, come up first with a tagline of what they want to be. And once they determine what they want to be, we can then get into the strategic approach of developing a SWOT analysis, which is defining what the strengths are of the organization, what some of the weaknesses are, identifying your opportunities, and then identifying your threats to begin that type of analysis.
That's cool. But now, so I suppose, Kathleen, everybody added with a budget of $43,000, everybody's a volunteer. But how can you operate? How do you keep volunteers motivated when your organization is small and your niche is tiny and there's no money to reward anybody?
Well, again, reward comes in a lot of different forms, and it doesn't necessarily have to be monetary type things, but it is the reward of knowing that I'm helping people. But the key to this is, as we've been talking about this whole stakeholder thing, your volunteers are stakeholders in this organization. And one of the things is to go out there and ask them, who do you know? Because your volunteers are that key link to the community, and that community is where you're going to build these relationships that we've been talking about.
All right, so now let's assume they've gathered the various people in San Antonio, the various who are the stakeholders for a literacy organization? I mean, aside from schools, I guess.
Well, actually, literacy is in a unique position in that it really impacts on almost everything that happens in the community. Health issues relate to literacy, not only education, employment issues relate to literacy. So they've got a natural link with many, many other organizations already. They just need to start exploiting that.
Well, now does it matter? Now she's talking about people 15 years and older who read at the 0 to 5th grade level. Now we're talking people who really seriously need some major remedial work. Does the fact that that particular group, the demographic of their audience, does that affect who it is they reach out to?
To a degree, she's not going to be able to help people get high-tech jobs, for example, but people have to begin somewhere, so she's an important point on that spectrum of getting people to move people to employment, to help parents be able to assist their children in school, people to be able to understand instructions from their healthcare providers. So she plays an important role.
One of the things I think she needs to do is not focus on her organization, but the cause that they're concerned about. What she needs to show here, not her, it's not only her responsibility. The board needs to be involved, and the other stakeholders, and we come back to the board later. But what she needs to do is show the impact of these folks not being able to read, as Robert was saying, in terms of health issues, in terms of being able to drive, in terms of mobility, a whole variety of issues that these folks are constrained and can't be productive citizens. Now, there probably are some consequences as a result of that. And what she needs to do is show the impact, the outcome of the situation, so that people in general in her community are concerned about that.
So now, if she's going to try to put together all these stakeholders, is the idea that in order to get the stakeholders, she has to put the word out that people from 15 up who can't read are a threat or a problem? Is that the first thing, to get the message out that there is a problem?
No, I'm sitting here as we're talking about this, and the thought that comes to mind, and you mentioned it about the parents and the children, is that a lot of times what will motivate folks is the fact that I want to go home and help my children with their homework. And then you can put that in the context of, we need volunteers to help people help their children with their homework, which then adds to the community as a whole. So once again, we're looking at what is the impact of what's going on with this nonprofit on the entire community, and that brings it in. That's where you get the buy-in and the stakeholders.
But I mean, I don't understand the mood. So the parents would volunteer to teach others to read so they'd be more effective in teaching the kids to read?
No, what happens is the parents learn to read, which then they can go home and say, hey, let me help you with your homework. And that gives them the self-esteem to continue in their education process.
I see that Mary, to me, is in a very unique position. We're talking about that 0 to 15 age group.
Right.
She can
15 and older.
15 and older.
0 to 5th grade.
0 to 5th grade. What she can basically do, she's really providing a service early intervention. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone can buy into that, because in the long run it has a systemic effect on skilled workers, what type of trained workforce we're going to have.
And
I think
even crime, right? That I'm sure the people who
Yeah.
read better and are more employed are less likely to.
Correct. So she's in a unique position because she can collaborate just with about any organization in that city. And in a city of that size, there's a lot of organizations that she can begin collaborating with and take it also from an early intervention standpoint.
So she needs to make a whole bunch of phone calls right off the bat.
And another thing to keep in mind is that she's caught up in the day-to-day operations right now. And what she and her leadership need to do is step back. People are motivated by visions. They're motivated by exciting things, ideas, dreams. And I think what Kathleen was saying is to translate it into language that the average person, the potential supporter, can understand. As parents, you want your child to be able to read. You want to be able to help them to read. And so just imagine what it's like to be a parent, helpless, unable to help your child, okay, unable to give them a good start in life.
Well,
so help that parent, and volunteer, and also in terms of donors, support this effort, because those kids who can't read are at some point can become, I use the word very loosely, a burden on the rest of society. Well, so it's an investment to help them, as Toni was saying, at this stage, in preventive means.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and what Barry's saying is important, and there's no shortage of data. There's overwhelming data that shows all of these needs, parents working with children to prevent a cycle of illiteracy. But what Mary needs to do is to put a face on that data in her community.
Exactly.
The data is there, but she needs to put a face on it in her community.
Now, she asked about, one of the other things she asked about, how to mobilize the community. Now, I hear you guys saying that illiteracy is bad. Now, another possible way to get to mobilize the community could be to say that illiteracy is a threat rather than it's an unfortunate circumstance. And my guess is that framing it as a threat is more motivating to for people to do something what is not exactly flattering to people who cannot read.
Well, this is an issue because it's kind of a deficit approach, and really, in the long run, rather than focus on the negatives, I think it's a lot more productive to show how this is not really a problem so much for the people that it affects, but it's a problem for all the people that are affected by it. And
You mean for the people who can't read?
Well, for example, society in the healthcare situation, the American Medical Association has estimated that the cost to us for people that can't navigate the healthcare system because of illiteracy is $73 billion. That's a message that will resonate with people even if they're not altruistic. So,
So let's think. How do we think? Well, she wants to motivate her community to become involved and, I guess, raise money and to volunteer. So how do you think about developing an integrated plan to motivate a community to support a really small organization that's got a very specific little niche? How do you begin thinking about that?
I think, again, just to repeat, I think it's absolutely critical. She needs to get other people engaged. Otherwise, you can develop the greatest plan in the world, but nobody's going to people it. Okay, so she needs to gather people together. She needs to find a hook to gather them together. Okay, she needs a reason for them to come together. That might be the face of it. Okay, and even if it's a small group, it's important to take action and move away into the realm of possibility and hopefulness. And in that group, for those folks to start buying in by talking about, doing an analysis, doing the SWOT analysis Toni spoke about, and identify where that organization can make a difference. And then people will take ownership and want to make a difference. Primary volunteers.
Is there a difference between motivating people to go out and teach reading and motivating businesses and various leaders to volunteer to serve on a board?
Yes, there is, simply because if you put that face on it like we've been talking about, for volunteers to go tutor, that's the face. But if we're talking about a board, we're really talking about somebody that's really having to go out, and I want you to roll up your sleeves and work differently. Yes, they're volunteers, but they're working differently, because I like to think of them as kind of at this level of the volunteer piece. So you want those folks to buy in for different reasons, and it may be for the influences that they have in the community, and like it or not, maybe they've got some money that they can help with.
So how do you get those volunteers? I mean, I'm sure because we'd all like the biggest, richest, most famous people in our communities to just say, I want to devote my life to your cause.
Yeah, well, again, it's getting that buy-in and saying, hey, we need you to come on this board for very specific skills. In other words, for example, if you know somebody that is really good at public relations, would you come and sit on our board for a while and help us with our PR? Or it may be, hey, we need somebody on this board that knows how to specifically fundraise, and you go out and recruit specifically for those folks.
Okay, so but I'm guessing that in San Antonio there's more than one literacy program.
Probably, yeah.
So now why are they going to come to Project Learn to Read rather than any of the other 15?
Well, one of the things that I think Mary should do, I think what Kathleen is talking about is creating a sense of advocacy. Mary may be the spokesperson, but in your organization you can have many people carrying that message. And I think one of the things Mary should also do is push her message out, but work with other people to do that, not only with your volunteers, but with your boards, and identifying key business leaders and explaining to them why this is a problem. And then also contacting your local media. The media isn't interested in just your organization. It's coming up with ways and pushing human interest stories out. And once your message gets out in front of the public, that also has an effect. Volunteers will come, but she's competing with many literacy organizations within the city. So therefore, she has to push the message out, talk to reporters, talk with the print media, and come up with a way by which she can begin attracting people to her organization by working with a broader group of people, and she just cannot be the only spokesperson. She has to engage others.
And it's important to understand that the reason general volunteers, but particularly board members, get involved, one of the main reasons is to make a difference. They want to improve society. So when you push this message out, as Toni is saying, and you show people that there's, again, hopefulness, this possibility of change, they can personally make a difference. Not only in giving money, giving their time, giving their expertise. Then you have the hook for an individual. But that requires time. And it requires people want to invest their energy. They don't want to get involved in something, and I'm not suggesting this is the case with this project, but that looks like it's a losing cause. They want to have a sense that it's an investment to move forward.
But now, Robert, Kathleen pointed out that people have various reasons for being on board. Sometimes the reasons are commitment to the cause, other times it's because they want to hang out with Barry Silverberg. And so you got all these people at a table trying to develop a plan, but you could almost be certain that there are any number of different reasons they're there. How do you navigate that? All those competing and sometimes contradictory interests to get a plan.
Well, I don't necessarily think they have to be contradictory, because each person has an expertise that they're contributing, and more than likely they probably think their piece of the puzzle is the most critical piece, and you can capitalize.
But of course,
on
mine
it.
is really the most important.
Like we all do. Like we all do.
That's right.
But you can actually capitalize on that, and I think if you one-to-one, you can show people how what they are doing, their contribution to your board, how it fits. They need to really see how important it is, and also how it fits into the whole piece. And I think if you do a good job of communicating that you're going to get that buy-in from everybody.
But it seems like isn't there sort of jujitsu you got to do, because you got to provide some leadership and some vision of the thing, but you also got to kind of integrate everybody else's stuff and make sure they all get along, and that seems like it's a big kind of juggly, jujitsu, mushy.
That always is. I mean, even in business, that is. There's no magic bullet for that, but I think when everybody is clear, if I'm clear about what my contribution is, I've been asked to sit on boards sometimes and they have no idea why they want me there. Maybe they met me somewhere and thought, hey, he's a nice guy, but they don't have a clear picture of what I'm going to do, and that tells me right away I'm going to have trouble on that board, because they don't know what they want from me, and so what is it that I'm going to project and offer to them. So I think right off the bat, you need to have a clear picture of what your expectations are from every board member.
Yeah, but I think those expectations are dynamic. They may be what you call evolving.
Yeah.
And I know when you join boards, if you don't have, as you mentioned, a clear vision, sometimes board members will lose interest. Volunteerism will drop off because they don't even know where the leadership is trying to take them. But I think if you get people around the table, come up with 3 or 4 message points. Begin to think strategically with your board to see if there's buy-in on these 3 or 4 message points. And then from there, you can push those out.
Now, you made a point earlier about the fish place in Washington, Seattle. So now Mary Cantu wants her place to be, they want to expand and multiply their efforts so they can meet demand throughout the city of San Antonio. So are they doing the right thing, at least in dreaming that they'll go from $43,000 budget to serving the entire city? That's a good big dream, isn't it?
I think it's a realistic goal also. I think in order to become successful, it is about thinking big. There's a lot of books written, moving from good to great. You have to first have that fundamental philosophy about your organization and belief system. Look at Muhammad Ali. What was his mantra? I am the greatest. He didn't say, I believe I'm the greatest. So with Mary Cantu's organization, she's going to have to think big, most definitely have a plan, and then move forward. But she's going to have to start off.
Is she realistic? I think she's wacky if she thinks she's going to go from this little tiny thing.
Well, not to dream that, but one of the things I'd like to kind of make clear is that greatness is not always bigness. You know, greatness can be quality, and Mary could just as easily dream to be the highest quality program in San Antonio, delivering the types of services she delivers, and that would be just as noble of a dream as to try and be the largest program doing that. So those are things you need to decide which of those, and one might result in the other, but it's a valid.
But that's why I mentioned in terms of when you talk about bigness, and you thought you used the term wacky. You said she must be wacky to think she's going to move from 43 to $173,000 a year. But it goes back to the approach that I had talked about, is developing your tagline or developing your brand philosophy. During that strategic thinking standpoint with your board and your volunteers, you begin to develop buy-in. And she's not wacky if the board and the volunteers say, we want to. It may not mean that we're going to triple our budget, but it may mean that we're going to serve some 50 students instead of 20 students. I mean, so there's different benchmarks that you can put in place.
So she's not wacky unless her board and volunteers say she's wacky.
No, picking up on what you just said, Mary is an enthusiastic, passionate leader. A leader by themselves is nothing. She needs followers. She needs other people on board, okay? And what she needs to do, if she hasn't already done it, is spend time engaging those people so that they share her dream and they want to move forward. Now, I know you use the word wacky, you know, in a silly way there of sorts, but the fact is, the greatest things that have happened in our society start off as wacky ideas, okay? So if she's wacky, she's on the right track. Okay? And with that in mind, I also believe that passion, which she clearly has, and this issue of literacy and other nonprofit issues, gather people with passion, when combined with discipline and competencies, which will come from recruiting other individuals, volunteers, etc., which speaks to what Robert was saying, the essential nature of defining what you need and then going out to get it. That's not soft stuff. That's the stuff that creates the right people in the room, and then you can have you can ignite those people. And I think Mary has the characteristics and qualities of igniting people. She has that passion. She cares.
And look at our Bill Gates and Michael Dell.
Oh yeah, yeah. But you know, one thing I was sitting here as you were talking is that what's good right now, she has to understand that may not be good for the organization 5 years.
Whoa, I don't understand. What do you mean?
What she may need right now in her organization that she would very much look for may not fit 3 or 4 years from now. And I think a lot of folks get in, oh, it's working right now, and they don't think beyond that. And it has to be something very dynamic and moving ahead. Because if you just think, oh, good, okay, I'm here, I've got whatever money I need, and then we get in this okay mode. Oh, this is fine. If we stay in that mode, we'll get right back where she is right now. So it's looking ahead and keep moving. And that's the reason sometimes you think about boards and everything. They can't be the same board you need right now. 3 years from now, you may need a whole different set of characteristics on that board to make the organization work.
Well, then, to not say that she's wacky, but how do we? Okay, I draw
wacky's a compliment.
Wacky's good. Yeah. But there is such a thing as realism. So, what is the difference between a lack of realism and visionary leadership?
I would side with Toni to some extent. I don't think she's dreaming big enough. Okay, the way, and again, we only know what's been told us in this particular instance. We talked about an organization and a budget. We mentioned staff. We didn't talk about clientele. Yeah. And what would excite me as a donor is knowing the impact my donation is making. That as a result of one staff person, I'm going to be able to reach X number of people. But also, the staff people come in after you've convinced me that you've got a well-run operation, you're effective, you're credible, you're using volunteers, And a friend of mine has happened to work there or volunteer there, tells me what a great place it is, which is public relations, but also having a credible experience. And one of the problems an organization the size that we're looking at has is that you have an individual who's got to go in too many different directions.
It's personality driven, and if
It's
that personality
exactly.
goes away, the organization could go away, and that's the scary part.
But I would assume that the following of a passionate leader is what motivates a whole bunch of volunteer work.
Well, it is, but if it is strictly on her shoulders, which it sounds like it is right now, if something...
There's no money, they got $43,000.
Yeah, it's on her shoulders. Okay, but what happens there, though, is if it stays on her shoulders and something happens, it's going to go down the tubes real quick because it's one person doing one. I think she's covering about 52,000 bases at this point in time, and that's scary. It could, I mean, the whole thing could implode.
Okay, she got no money though. She got $42,000. She's got all these people. What is she supposed to do?
Step back.
Yeah.
Step back.
That's hard.
Think
to do.
about it for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Spend time strategizing, identify some people who are probably already involved, the volunteers are already involved. She has some members on the board, okay? Speak to colleagues in the literacy field, other nonprofits, not just literacy, but other nonprofits. Bring them together and talk. Even if she can't put together, a fancy strategic planning session, the critical thing is to communicate, create relationships. And if the organization is perceived as having value in the community, which is another issue, okay, then people will come on board and be supportive. And then ultimately you reach some of the people Toni talked about.
It occurs to me that actually, are people in the press and the media, are they stakeholders? Should they be a part of this whole discussion?
Most definitely.
What's their stake, though?
Most definitely.
What do
Their
the TV
stake is
guys
that
care?
we're going to have a lack of a trained workforce. But one of the things in terms of dealing with boards that Kathleen mentioned is that when you set up your boards and your volunteers and you set up your advisory boards, I know for a nonprofit that I serve on, we have several people from Texas Monthly. We have several people from the print media and the electronic media, so that we can begin to show them why they should have a vested interest. And then in turn, that's also another way with getting your message out. So I think it's imperative that we get people in the communication field involved in what we're doing. So most definitely, I would definitely pull them in. And as Barry mentioned, it isn't really about the leader. It's about getting people together, your board, your volunteers. And one of the things that we did with another nonprofit is when Mary's trying to get her message out, we begin to have breakfast meetings once a month, and we send invitations out to just different key community leaders. Come hear our message. Let us tell you what we're about. And eventually, we look at the bottom line that she wants to double her budget. That may not be the initial focus right now, because what will happen in the long run, as they say, the heartstring is connected to the purse string. So you want to begin first educating, getting your message out, and let the financial impact, even though we know we need money to survive and keep our doors open, but eventually that will come.
But wait, now actually the last for 4 points was, how do we find the resources to make it all possible? The resources, she needs some serious money. Can she just afford to, you say she shouldn't be complacent, but she really should be trying to get her $170,000, right? So how does she make that happen?
But she hasn't made a case from material that we've been given, and again, we're looking at
That's right.
She hasn't made a case. Why 170? Why not 250?
170 will give her 4 full-time and
But
1
still,
half.
what does 4 full-time,
Short-sighted.
half-time
What's
people
that
do?
translate
Well,
into?
yeah.
Okay, if she was to say, my goal is to eliminate or reduce, illiteracy by 10% in this segment of San Antonio, this segment, whatever, and to me as a potential donor or supporter, my energy as well as my dollars, it came across as credible and reasonable.
Correct.
To say to go from 1 staff or no staff to 4 staff, the question that arises, and no question of Mary per se, but does she or whoever's in that position have the competence to now engage in a management function, which is going to take away from some of the service delivery at the current time?
And Barry's exactly right. What he did
Say that
in
again.
terms of
He probably doesn't
Barry's
do that
exactly
either.
right. What in our case study that we're looking at is that she has really have not identified a call to action. And I think what Barry's talking about in terms of getting people to engage in your organization, you first have to develop some type of call to action.
What does that mean at first?
In terms of if someone come into your organization, if I'm going to serve on a board, if I'm going to reach into my pocket and give you money, the call to action is what will motivate me to do that.
But that goes right back to the strategic planning and having some outcomes in the beginning. This is what I want to see happen, like Barry said.
Right, quantifying things.
Exactly. You've got to have those numbers.
Also, I think one of Mary's greatest assets that we really haven't talked a whole lot about is her clientele. These are people that live in the barrios of San Antonio.
The people that over
are
15
served.
who can't read?
The people that are served. I was told some years back by someone at the Public Policy Institute that the reason, say in this particular case, that this cause has not been on the radar very high is that the only queries they get are from people who make their living in this field, not from the people who are served. When the phones start ringing off the hook from citizens that demand these services, that's when you'll get this call to action. So she's got people that respect her in these neighborhoods, that look to her as a leader, place a value on what her organization is doing for them. She needs to mobilize them, and I think that's one of her. That's an asset that doesn't cost a lot of money to put into action.
And I think, and that was really a key in terms of what you were saying, is because when we talk about the media, you're saying how do we engage them? They're not really interested in just the organization. The key is that they're interested in those human interest stories, and they're interested in the products and services that you provide, and how it affects the organization.
Well, I assume that all media organs are interested in being perceived as doing good in their communities too, right?
Yes, but still, you have to still have some type of call to action.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
and I'm just saying that's another stake they have in it. Another thing
most
they have at
definitely.
stake. They want people to think, oh, those Channel 7 guys, they support my community.
But let's not forget, the media people are also people. And as people...
They are? Whoa, wait a minute. Oh, let's write this down.
But as people, and I think this is one of the problems we have in nonprofits, we objectify people. We put them into a slot. The client, poor helpless client, poor volunteer, or volunteer who's only in this little slot.
Right.
And we don't really empower those folks. So there are media people, I'm sure, by the fact that they're making their living and have chosen to enter into a career that's all about words and all about language.
Exactly.
Okay? As individuals, they will probably have a proclivity and a sensitivity to my clients. And so I would look around, okay? And I wouldn't look at them only as media people. And that's when you look at your board, it's not just selling it to a media person, get somebody on the inside.
Most definitely.
Okay? As Toni was saying before, in terms of her own experience and volunteer experiences, you know, Toni's not just a press person, just a media person. She's a person.
Right.
And that's a revolutionary act for organizations, not to look at people in that way.
There's a big difference too between media just providing information and really using the media for advocacy. There's a huge difference. Just getting your little press releases out and your little stories out, people need to learn how to use the media to affect social change. And most of the time you see the media used as just a vehicle for sharing information.
Right.
Well, how do you make the flip? How do you go from just getting your message out to...
I think when you link to other activities, like for example, if I have a choice, I can say, well, all the people that live in these neighborhoods in San Antonio, they can't read. Okay, that may not be compelling enough. People know that already. But if I can say that, 70% of these people are dealing with illnesses, let's say, early childhood issues, that they don't have the tools to deal with these issues, that becomes a stronger push on policymakers to start wanting to make a change. And you want a tagline, I think literacy is the power in empowerment. It really is. I mean, that's what it's about. It's not about reading.
And I think another key that Mary should play upon, or this whole board, it isn't about only San Antonio. Right. Literacy is a national problem. We have people that are grown adults who go and cannot fill out a job application. So this is something that affects all of us. It isn't only in the barrios of San Antonio. This is a national epidemic.
Well, I think on that note, we're going to thank our guests, and particularly thank Barry for the revolutionary notion that media people are human. Yeah. I'm not quite sure I buy it, but okay. We want to thank our panel. Thanks to Robert Pinhero, thank you so much, and to Toni Gardner, and to Barry Silverberg, and Kathleen McCleskey. And thank you for watching. In Texas and elsewhere, there are community-based and nonprofit organizations facing the challenges of the economy, the need for more resources and volunteers, and greater focus. As we've explored in this presentation, and as H.L. Mencken said, some problems are so difficult they can't be solved in 1,000,000 years unless someone thinks about them for 5 minutes. In the time we've spent together, we hope we have presented some ideas that will motivate and inspire you to action. For more resources on the topics we've discussed, visit the website of the Center for Community-Based and Nonprofit Organizations at www.nonprofittexas.org, and feel free to call upon our experts through the Center for further advice. For the Center for Community-Based and Nonprofit Organizations at Austin Community College and its Adult Literacy Organizational Training Project, I'm Aaron Freeman, wishing you every success in the future.